Hello everyone and welcome to another XCOM 2 challenge run. So a few people have dared me to try and beat the game without mimic beacons since I like to use them so much. But my good people, what you don't understand is that there's always mimic beacons available. So I figured we'd take it a step further today and rule out all utility items completely. Now this includes mimic beacons, yes, but also grenades, medikits, battle scanners, all of it. The only exception will be using the Skulljack for story progression purposes. So yeah, that's the question we're asking today. Can you beat XCOM 2 War of the Chosen without using utility items? And before we begin, a quick plug for my Twitch and my second YouTube channels. I stream most of these runs on Twitch, and I archive the streams on my other YouTube channel. The links to both are in the description if you're interested, and I have to give a shout out to YouTube viewer Flaming Man 2.0. He's always in the comments of the archive streams, giving the timestamp for when the gameplay starts. It's really helpful for viewers, and this guy doesn't get enough credit, so thanks again, Flaming Man. So the rules. We're playing on Veteran difficulty today, we're playing Honest Man, and we obviously cannot use any utility items apart from the aforementioned Skulljack. Now Veteran difficulty is a change of pace for me. I normally play on Commander. I want to try out Veteran, not so much to make the run easier, but just to make it faster. Getting these videos out takes a lot of work, and having the campaigns be a bit shorter on Veteran difficulty, I'm hoping will allow me to keep the content coming regularly without getting burnt out. The videos may be a bit shorter if the campaign isn't as long, but apart from that, there shouldn't really be any change on your end. And for the sake of full transparency, I've also installed a mod that lets you skip ambush missions. Instead of playing the mission, the game just calculates will loss and rolls for any wounds inflicted on your troops. I did this because ambush missions are, well, just really boring, and they're never going to change the outcome of the campaign. I've never lost one, and I've never suffered any casualties on one. They're just a chore. So this mod still has the same negative effects on your troops from playing the ambush mission. It just saves some time, so I think it's a fairly reasonable compromise. However, all that being said, it does have a bug which would cause a bit of a problem later in the run, so I probably won't use this mod in the future, but I figured it was information worth sharing, just so you all know how the run works. And speaking of the run, let's get on with it. So this time I've started with 1 Reaper and 11 rookies, the same as a regular run, no special starting soldiers this time. And I decided to start with Reapers as they're overall the best hero class in my opinion, and I figure in this run we're going to be needing all the help we can get. And we can actually use the Reaper's Claymore. It's a secondary weapon, not a utility item. And given we can't use grenades, initially this thing will be our only way to shred and to damage cover. So yeah, the Reapers are a really good faction to start with for this run. For the strategic layer, I opt to build the GTS first rather than the resistance ring. I'm expecting we'll be taking quite a few casualties in this run, so being able to train more soldiers will be vital. And we save some supplies, as the usual purchases of a flashbang and medikit we have to skip. On the second mission, on our literal first turn, we lose concealment to some terribly placed civilians. And all I can say is you guys are really lucky that I'm not allowed to use grenades in this run. So after we take a casualty on this mission, I decide to restart. I mean, losing a soldier isn't that big a deal, but it's only the second mission, so a restart won't take long, and I don't want to take an unnecessary loss just because of those scumbag civilians. Now the second attempt is a restart on the first mission. We've done even worse this time, and the problem here is the first pod wasn't clustered close enough together, so we weren't able to hit all 3 of the troopers with our claymore. See, if we can hit all 3 of them at once, we can wipe out the whole pod and remain in concealment for the second pod. So it's kind of important that that happens. So let's restart and try again. And this time, not only can we hit the whole pod with the claymore, but we can hit a 4th unit too. Such a shame that you had to stand right next to those guys, civilian. I don't know how I'm gonna sleep tonight. This time the second mission is in the sewers. At least there's no civilians to get in the way down here. It is a close one as we're running out of turns, so I have to let 2 sectoids live for their turn, just so I can get close enough to the objective. Our Reaper, James Thomas, does take some damage, which is pretty much the worst case scenario. He's currently our most valuable trooper, but we do win the mission and we get the engineer, so it's not too bad all up. Now with the GTS built, we can train some troops. I want Grenadiers initially, as we're going to need their Shredder ability for when mechs and mutons start showing up. And Rangers are good too, as their melee attacks will be good against the sectoids. And given we can't use flashbangs to break mind control, sectoids could be a lot more dangerous than usual on this run. And here's a good example on the 3rd mission. This sectoid has mind-controlled Cloud, and the Lost have come running in behind it. Now with grenades, this situation would be really easy to solve. We'd just toss a grenade out there, we'd blow these guys up and send them to the ground below. That would cut off the Lost from being able to reach us, and we could then gun down the sectoid from the safety of the high ground. But obviously, we can't do any of that on this run. So instead we have to run out to flank the sectoid, which puts us right next to the Lost. Now one of them is a brute as well, and we do take some damage, but it's not the end of the world. We broke mind control with the power of our bullets, and that's the main thing. Also, this mission is one where you can obtain 2 extra soldiers as long as you rescue them from the battlefield, and we can actually use these guys in this run, so that's 2 extra specialists for us. And we're going to need those specialists since the first chosen is the Assassin. I brought 2 Rangers on this mission as I figured their high mobility sword attacks would be useful, but no, she's immune to melee. And she also has low profile. These are some really awful strengths for her to have. And her weaknesses are Reapers and Groundling, so this is a pretty bad start for us. And because we can't use battle scanners, we're going to need to get some specialists with scanning protocol as soon as we can. Now we still have 1 trooper left to deal with when she appears to ruin our day. I consider evacing out, but she does have less health since we're on a lower difficulty, so perhaps being a little reckless, I decide to charge in. And apart from the initial attack from concealment, we take her and her trooper underling down without taking any further damage ourselves. So this actually went really well. Also, now is probably as good as ever a time to mention that you'll see a lot of new soldiers in this run. I mean, you've probably noticed that already. The Twitch channel has been doing really well and lots of people have been submitting characters to the pool. It's really awesome to see. But some of the people's characters are... well, they're... yeah. I never thought I would say this, but Leeson is looking pretty normal by comparison. Now things go pretty well on the tactical layer for a while. I'm focusing on leveling up the specialists and grenadiers, the specialists for medical protocol and scanning protocol, as they're our only options to heal and scan, and the grenadiers for shred and demolition. Now, I really don't like demolition as an ability. It seems to miss all the time, but in a world with no grenading, demolition may prove useful if we need to destroy some cover in a pinch. I mean, it'll probably just miss and do nothing and the cover will stay, but it is an option that we have, even if it's not a particularly good one. And once we have the black market available, I use Intel to purchase some alloys and lyrium crystals so we can fast track building a spark. I normally wouldn't do this, but having a bulky soldier who can hopefully survive a couple of hits should be really useful. Not to mention the spark cannon can shred, and the sparks also have a heavy weapon, and heavy weapons are allowed in this run. They're not utility items. You cannot place them in a utility item slot, so they're fair game. And on our Spark's first outing, the assassin shows up again. We get a little bogged down as she's on the roof, and I did get a glimpse of a pod just on her right and our left, so I have to engage her without activating the other enemies. This kind of limits our options and how aggressive we can be. But once we do get to send her away, well, we do it in explosive fashion. Heavy weapons are coming in pretty useful already. And we are rocking some magnetic weapons by this stage, so that helped us out too. Now, our first resistance order was the one that increases excavation speed by 50%, and we can increase this even further by scanning at Skirmisher HQ. The two abilities do stack. So we clear out all the rooms in the Avenger quite quickly, and I've started work on some useful facilities like the training center and the Scilab. We also have plated armor by now, which, in addition to making our soldiers bulkier, it also means we can build exosuits, and exosuits will give us more heavy weapons to use. Now, before too long, we've made contact with the Warlock's region. He's weak to explosives and skirmishes, so check this one out.
I need ammunition.
Our Spark Party Pooper, or PP for short, is really putting the Chosen in their place. I'm a fan of his work, I do have to admit. And as for the Warlock's strengths, they're Shadow Step, Watchful, and Prelate. A little bit annoying, but hopefully we can deal with it. But it's around this time I realise we have a problem. Our Reaper Thomas was supposed to recover from being tired a while ago, but he hasn't. Now, he had been a part of an ambush mission that we skipped because of the mod that I've got installed. And apparently it's a known glitch with this mod that it can cause soldiers to get stuck in the tired state and they will never recover, not even using console commands. So we may have to use Thomas as a human mimic beacon and recruit another Reaper. Sorry, that's not right. I mean, we may have to say our farewells to Thomas and recruit another Reaper. I guess I'm destined to just have to play ambush missions forever. On the next council mission, we're able to skulljack the Codex. This is the first piece of story progression I've done in this campaign. I really need to get a wriggle on with that. And by now we also have 2 exosuits, so we're sporting 3 heavy rockets every mission. And not a moment too soon, as Advent are now deploying mutons. Well, let's show them how we do things around these parts. Wait, what? So here's what I think happened. We blew up the pod with our rocket. The Purifier survived the rocket hit. You can see that from the damage values. Nothing did 8 damage, which is how much HP that thing has. But the fall damage is actually what finished the Purifier off, and the fall damage caused it to explode upon death. The problem being is that it fell right on top of our VIP when our rocket took out the floor. So yeah, a very unfortunate turn of events there. Now we failed the mission, which means I not only have to remake contact with this region, but we have to rebuild the radio tower we had placed there. See, this region was giving us the tactical analysis continental bonus, so we want to get it back as quickly as we can. On the next mission, I have a bit of an idea regarding our Reaper, who is perpetually tired. See, this mod has caused him to not recover from will loss, but perhaps he can still recover from injury. There's only one way to find out.
Placing explosive. That one hurt. This is the end. We're losing it.
Wounded for 13 days, huh? Well, we can scan at Templar HQ to improve that time, but regardless, we'll check back in on him then, and we'll see if my brilliant plan has worked. And if it hasn't, we just forced an old man to detonate an explosive right in his face for no reason. So, hopefully it works. We have a retaliation mission, and by this point I'm deploying a second spark in the form of Julian. Not only are the sparks bulky, but their Rainmaker ability makes their rockets devastating. Rockets are the main form of AoE support that we have right now, and these metal boys are really locking things down for us. Then I equip both of them with scopes and autoloaders so they can really bring the pain. And so the moment of truth, let's check in on Thomas, our Reaper. Yeah, it turns out my Claymore to the face plan has worked perfectly. His will is now recovering like it should be, and he's no longer tired. It does take some time for it to come back fully, but that's okay. We have plenty of soldiers to use in this run, so it's not really a problem. We have a horde mission up next, so I decide to bring some of the low-level troops. The no ambush mod seems to be causing another problem that units aren't always getting promoted after a covert op, so I have to send them out on an actual mission in order for the promotion to trigger. But I'm sure it'll be fine. The Lost are usually pretty easy to deal with, and they'll be the only enemies on the map. Unless the assassin shows up, of course. That's not good. Now the Lost actually reveal her for us so we can get the drop on her, and we take her out before she can do anything, and then we start a mad dash back to the evac zone. That went surprisingly well. We have a supply raid, which is our first mission in the Hunter's territory. His strengths are Shogun, Kinetic Plating, and Soul Stealer. Now there's some pretty awful strengths if I'm being honest. However, his weaknesses are pretty brutal for him. He's weak to Templars and close range attacks. So that means if we can get our Templar up close and personal with him, she's going to be able to inflict huge damage with Rend. And even better, we have the sit rep that gives every squad member one use of the conceal ability, so sneaking up on him should be no problem. And once we're in position, we hit him for 15 damage. This hit was not a crit, and we didn't even have a full focus bar. I think the Hunter's gonna be in a bit of trouble in this run. And we get more good news as we now have a covert op to recruit a second Reaper, and it's the man himself, Lucas Vogel. He's back. By the next council mission, Advent are deploying Andromedons. Late game enemies with high health pools are going to be a real problem for us. Now by this stage, our Psi operative Depression has quite a few useful abilities, one of which being Sustain. And I do have a bit of a plan with our Psyops. I've sent this guy out on a covert op or two that has increased his dodge stat, and I've given him a PCS to do the same thing. My ultimate plan is to get one or two Psyops with as high dodge as possible and then put them in warsuits when we have them. Between the armor points they'll receive from the warsuit, plus the chance of dodging, they'll take very little damage when they get hit. And even if their HP does get taken to 0, Sustain will trigger to keep them alive. I'm basically planning on the Psyops acting as incredibly tough, living mimic beacons. We're gonna run into enemies we won't be able to take down in a turn, so having a tank or two who can draw fire is going to be vital. However, that day hasn't come just yet. This Andromedon has nothing on us. We can take it down quite easily. The next guerrilla op is another horde mission. I've given Julian the repair ability by now, and our sparks are rocking level 3 armor, so we should hopefully be able to avoid any Arnie style losses. Because I can't handle another one, I'm telling you. And given it's only Lost again, I bring some more low level soldiers. Our spark duo should be able to keep them safe, and we can get some XP for them. I mean, what's the worst that can happen when it's only the Lost?
On your order. We're spotted!
Oh, that's the worst that can happen, right. Well, the first thing to do is to use a missile on the wall. Now this does take down a couple of Lost, but that's not the main purpose. We really just need to tear these walls down so we can get line of sight on the Lost. And now that we have line of sight, there's really only one course of action that I can see. We have to engage what I have professionally dubbed the kill everything mode with Julian and send him in. And I cannot think of a better man for the job. So yeah, with our Spark Boys protecting us, it seems no harm will come to XCOM. Unless the Warlock shows up, of course. And what is up with the Chosen appearing on Horde missions? This is 2 in a row. And even worse, just as the Warlock hits us with a Mind Scorch, another wave of Lost pour in. Quite a big one too. Now I'm confident we could win this mission, but I'm also confident that we would take some damage in the process. And I don't really want that to happen. The reward is only a scientist, and we're already dominating on the research front. We don't need a scientist. See, skipping most of the autopsies, since they only give utility items, which we cannot use anyway, has actually resulted in some really quick progress on the research front. In fact, we've got level 3 weapons researched that we can't actually buy since our research has eclipsed our supplies so greatly. Now, given this information, I decide we're better off just running away. We're able to hack the objective on the way out, which stops the dark event, and that's all that I really care about. Now, we do blow up the Warlock with a rocket on the way out just because we can, and then we leave him and the Lost to sort it out amongst themselves. Have fun, everybody. By the next mission, Advent are deploying sector pods. I really don't feel prepared for this, and it gives me a bit of a wake-up call. See, we've got dozens of corpses in storage that we cannot use. Most of them are only used for utility items, which makes them worthless to us in this run. So I sell a lot of them in order to purchase powered armor for the whole squad. This should help keep everyone alive if we can't deal with the sector pod in one turn. And of course, when we do activate the sector pod, we trigger another pod and some Lost at the same time. Now we have reobtained a tactical analysis by this point, so I figure falling back out of line of sight is probably our best bet. Now sector pods do have 3 action points, so it could still theoretically move and attack us, but I'm hoping it'll be too distracted by the Lost to do that. And that's exactly what happens, so awesome. Now between Advent and the Lost, we're dealing with a massive amount of enemies. Now we obviously prioritise the sector pod and we take it out quite quickly, but during this extended exchange, we do take a few injuries, mostly from Lost. Now thankfully there's no casualties, that's the main thing, but now that the bad guys are deploying sector pods, I really need to speed things up. Missions are only going to get more difficult as more time passes. So how about hitting the assassin's stronghold? Once she's out of the way, we can hit the black site without any problems. We're sporting a couple of war suits by now, and I've brought 2 specialists so we can use scanning protocol twice on the assassin. Once for her initial spawn, and then once again when she returns after we've wiped out the sarcophagus. And I'm hoping that 2 uses of this ability is all that we'll need. The first section of the map is pretty uneventful for the most part. We come across an Andromedon and a bunch of Archons at the elevator. Our Reaper, Ghost, has scouted ahead of the rest of the group, and the pod is standing next to an explosive. So I figure before they can move, let's use Banish and blow it up. Now I was thinking the pod would just scatter within the elevator room, but instead they make a beeline towards the rest of our pod. Now I guess this makes sense when you think about it, they would come looking for the thing that caused the explosion, but now we've been left out of position with a whole pod of high HP enemies in line of sight, and what's worse, we're in their line of sight. We're thankfully able to take down everything except for one of the Archons, and it only goes for blazing pinions, so that's really not a big deal. We have had to use one of our rockets though, and with the war suits we have plenty more, so it's fine, but in general I do like to save consumables for the final chamber whenever possible. And speaking of the final chamber, we dominate a priest and vanquish a mech that's waiting for us. Now it's time for the assassin herself. And scanning protocol is great for these missions. The AoE is just simply too big, and it seems there's nowhere the Chosen can go to avoid it. And for some really strange reason, the assassin has spawned in without any armor points. I don't know if this is a glitch or what's going on, but I'll take it, it works for us. And given Ghost is able to take almost half her health with one critical hit, you can probably guess how this one's gonna go. The Invisible Woman does not stand much of a chance in this one. Before we can destroy the sarcophagus, a heavy mech and a spectre drop in, and I'm really wishing I had a mimic beacon right about now. However, thanks to our mind-controlled priest, we actually have 2 uses of stasis, rather than just one with our psyop, so we can shut down both of these enemies and focus on the sarcophagus. And we don't actually need the second use of scanning protocol. The assassin moves to a spot that was flanked by Ghost, so he reveals her straight away. We then use him to toss a claymore down, and it's goodbye assassin. Now I did have someone else blow up the claymore, as Ghost would get a damage bonus against her, so I was thinking it would be better to save his gunshot for the assassin herself, but we didn't actually need it in the end. The claymore destroyed what was left of her in a single blast. And with the assassin out of the way, now we can hit the black site. The pods are a little bit hairy. We run into 3 Andromedons over the course of the mission, but we just use the usual strategy of taking it nice and slow. I also try to avoid using overdrive on both sparks at the same time. This is a more general strategy that I'm adopting on every mission to try and always have one overdrive available in case things go sideways and we find ourselves in a bad situation. Now with this pod in the building, I do make a couple of pretty silly mistakes. I start by misclicking with Julian and I put him in front of a pole so he can't actually see the Andromedon, and then he, in kind, misses a 90% shot on the Archon. Then I try for a Nova on the Archon with PP, but I've positioned him one tile too far away so he can't use it. And then I forget that our Templar, Petrova, doesn't actually have the Fortress ability, and I run her right through some acid that the Andromedon left behind. This is kind of turning into a comedy of errors at this point. But even despite this, everyone makes it out alive, and that's the main thing. And with the black site done, we now get hit by the Hunter UFO. And the first reinforcement Bradford sends out is Pinky McPinkerson. Now, apart from the obvious red flags from this guy's name and his appearance, he's one of the lowest leveled soldiers in our barracks. I've no idea why he was sent out. So thanks Bradford, thanks a lot, really appreciate your help on this one. Our max leveled psyop, Depression, was tired for this one, so I kept him in the Avenger. That means we've got no mind control. So instead, the strategy for this one is to hold the line with the majority of the squad while Ghost sneaks up to the device. We throw 2 claymores down and then we use Sting to blow the beacon up while still remaining in concealment. And the best part is I place the claymores to deliberately not hit the pod standing right next to the device, so they don't even activate. And I just love this idea that these aliens are standing right next to the thing they're meant to be protecting. It randomly blows up and they do absolutely nothing in response. Now with the device destroyed, we run Ghost back to the rest of the team as fast as we can, and then we fly out of here. This one went very well. Now given our story progression is going so well, I decide we might as well hit the Forge mission next. Now the Hunter will be here since we haven't taken him out yet, but I figure we can deal with him. And I have to say here, Blade Storm on Codexes is amazing. We run Drifter in to target it with Slash, but he then gets a second attack with Blade Storm and takes it out before it gets a chance to clone. Now given we don't have flashbangs or frost bombs, I need to be using this strategy more often. We take out the sector pod pretty easily and then we push forward, and this mission is really weird. The Hunter leaves us alone the entire time. Like, he had been set up right in front of where the evac zone is. But as we're moving towards the evac zone to escape the area, he actually moves to the other side of the building, totally out of our way, as if he was deliberately trying to avoid us. Sometimes it almost feels like this guy is a double agent who's actually trying to help us. But whatever, that's another story mission done. The wheels of progress continue ever forward. So now let's try a regular mission for something a little bit different. We have a Protect the Device guerrilla op, and Advent are now deploying gatekeepers. This in of itself is not a problem. They've actually been fielding gatekeepers for a little while by this point, and we've been able to deal with them without too many issues. No, see, the real problem is that gatekeepers can do massive damage to the device, so we need to hurry if we're going to protect it. And I've brought mostly low-level soldiers on this one. The unexpected UFO defense has left our barracks pretty depleted. And by the time we reach the device, it's looking pretty sad. One more hit will take it out. Now thankfully we are down to the last pod. Everything else, including the gatekeeper, has been disposed of. But here I make a huge blunder. See, this shield bearer is just within our line of sight. But when I drop a rocket on the whole pod, it then vanishes from line of sight. Now I wasn't paying close enough attention, and I just assumed that it had been exterminated by the rocket. But turns out not, because once the Codex and Stun Lancer are gone, the mission doesn't end. The shield bearer is still there, it's just that destroying its cover, for some reason, made us no longer have line of sight on it. And we're pretty much out of actions for this turn. So I place a couple of soldiers out of cover, hoping to give the shield bearer a tempting target to shoot at. But even as I do this, I know most likely it's going to target the device and we're going to lose the mission. Now there is one thing we can do, but it's a bit of a long shot. We have a 14% chance of making this hack with PP, which will restore the entire squad's action points. Now I'm not expecting much, but we might as well try. There's nothing else we can do, we have nothing to lose. So we go for the hack, and, well, check it out for yourself. Alright, here we go. Oh, yeah! Yes, 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 yes! Boom, we just rolled 100 on that. Oh, oh, too good. We just got all our turns back. Oh, that was ridiculous. Oh, man. Oh, dear, oh, dear. So it turns out sometimes miracles do come true, even in XCOM. And I was honestly stunned when this happened. I thought we were doomed. I mean, we normally struggle to make a 60% shot, let alone a 14% hack. And I just imagine what it's like for the person controlling the shield bearer on the other side. They must be really salty. Like, imagine having a mission in the bag only to lose it at the last moment because your enemy made a 14% success rate hack. That's absolutely brutal. Anyway, I think PP just became the MVP of this run. Then I run into something which I honestly think is a first for me. On this retaliation mission, the first alien turn is bugged and it just doesn't progress. The game just gets stuck. So I reload, do our turn again, but the game does the same thing. It will not progress past the first alien turn, making this mission literally impossible to beat. And this is why we do not play on Iron Man. So I reload back to the strategic layer, and I realise I don't even need to do this mission. It's in the region with the Psionic Gate mission, yes, but we're not getting any continental bonuses from it. So I can just do the gate mission right now, then we can skip this retaliation mission and simply forfeit the region. Now I realise the retaliation mission probably would have worked if I went back into it after reloading, but I didn't really want to play it anyway, and it annoyed me by being broken. My new plan is the more expedient solution anyway, so we're just going to roll with that. And would you look at this, a whole pod of codexes. Let's try Drifter's Bladestorm one more time.
We bust this! Hostile terminated. X-ray neutralized.
So yeah, it's working well, as you can see. And since Drifter now has the assassin's weapons, the burrowed chrysalids are no big deal. We just send him out first and he cuts the chrysalids down as they try to attack him. And the same strategy actually works pretty well on the Warlock zombies too. Now we're pretty far away from the gate, but the gatekeeper somehow activates, and this seems really inconsistent. Like sometimes I have to move right up next to the gate in order to trigger the gatekeeper, but other times it seems like simply being in the same galaxy makes you close enough to trigger it. So I don't really understand how it works, but it's fine, the gatekeeper goes down quite easily anyway. And as for the Warlock, well, his Mind Scorch does nothing thanks to Depression Solace. We then blow him up with a rocket, and then a rapid fire from Drifter finishes him off. And even better, I've placed Drifter next to the Priest in stasis, so as soon as it tries to do anything on the next turn, well, it can't do anything on the next turn. We keep pushing on, this time skulljacking a Codex on a Guerrilla Op, and it goes down after a measly 2 shots from our Sparks, so nothing to worry about with that one. And not long after, we hit the Warlock stronghold, and the first section isn't much of a problem, just like the Assassins. I mean, look at this part. We encounter a pod of 3 Mutons and an Andromedon at the elevator. The Sparks eliminate 2 of the Mutons just with their Hunter Protocol ability alone. And I should say here, we have some really awesome resistance orders that are making things much easier than usual. We have orders to both buff our PCSs and our weapon mods, and we also have another one that buffs our shred attacks. And you can see here, one of our Sparks can shred the Andromedon for 4 points of armor. All of its armor gone with a single hit. And our Reaper James Thomas has also picked up the shred ability. I've said it in previous videos, but for newer viewers, a Reaper with shred is pretty much the best thing in the world. It combos so well with Banish. In the final area, 2 chrysalids await us. We wipe one out and we turn the other one into our pet. And turning our attention to the Warlock himself, well, you remember he was weak to explosions, right? So 2 claymores and a heavy rocket does just as much damage as you would expect it to. And taking him out so quickly means we can actually destroy the sarcophagus in the same turn. And Chosen health regenerates 5% slower on Veteran. I didn't actually know that before this run, but he's coming back with only 20% HP rather than the normal 25. So that's really not good for him, but it's pretty brilliant for us. So yeah, he's gone, let's move on to the next thing. And before too long, we've completed all the story research, and we can wrap up this campaign whenever we like. Now I'm still waiting on some weapon research to complete, and we obviously want to take out the hunter before we tackle the final mission. So let's go pay him a visit right now. And we're just in time as well, as our Templar has just reached maximum level. Given the hunter is weak to Templars, that's going to be useful. And unlike the previous two strongholds, the first area on this one is actually a bit interesting. We get some bad luck and we activate 2 pods on the same turn. Now between both these pods, we've got an Andromedon, 2 heavy mechs, and quite a few Advent soldiers to deal with. So this is not a great situation by any means, but by this point we have managed to get our hands on a blaster launcher. And the combination of a blaster launcher with a Spark's Rainmaker ability is pretty devastating.
Terminated with superior efficiency.
So things are looking a lot less scary now. These guys turn out to not be much of a problem after all, and we can keep heading to the elevator. And the thing I notice on this mission is that the layout of the base seems almost identical to the Warlock stronghold, to the point that the exact same pod of 3 Mutons and an Andromedon is waiting for us in the elevator room. Now this time we can only overwatch one of the Mutons to death, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but even so, we easily mop up these guys. And I will mention, I've given Depression the Boltcaster by this point. Psyops are usually the best class to give this weapon to, in my opinion. They have plenty of other abilities to use, so having to reload after every shot doesn't slow them down as much as it does other classes. And there's something really weird going on with the Hunter in this mission. He spawned in with shield points for some reason. Now he does have the kinetic plating ability, but none of our soldiers have fired at him, so he shouldn't have any shielding just yet. And when I hit him with a rocket, it doesn't shred his armor. He is immune to explosions, but a rocket should still shred. Maybe it didn't shred because of the shield, but he shouldn't have had the shield anyway. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, just to be even more annoying, he's also picked up the Planewalker ability. Now fortunately, it doesn't save him. Petrova can run in and hit him with over 20 damage with a single rend attack. So he doesn't last long despite the nonsense that we're getting. On the next turn, a Spectre and Archon come to join the party. We destroy the sarcophagus and the Spectre while hitting stasis on the Archon to shut it down. And you'll see here, the Hunter's kinetic plating again activates despite no one shooting at him. Now maybe the Spark's Hunter protocol is activating and they are shooting, the game just isn't showing the animation. I really don't know, that's my best guess. But he doesn't have much health, so it shouldn't make much of a difference. We go a bit overkill and finish him off with an Ionic Storm, purely because we can. So once we've researched the last of the weapon upgrades I want, it's time for the final missions. There's nothing else holding us back. And we've gotten some good luck for the network tower. We can actually send 4 soldiers thanks to an intel upgrade. So I send a Psyop, Grenadier, Spark, and a Ranger. And during the mission, we also mind control a Viper, so now we're up to 5 soldiers. Now given that, and as is usually the case with this mission, we pretty much just destroy everything that is foolish enough to stand against us. The basic strategy is to send the Viper first to be a living mimic beacon if we do run into any trouble, but we're able to deal with everything just fine, so the trouble never really comes. And now the final mission proper. For this one, I'm bringing a Specialist, a Spark, a Templar, a Psyop, a Reaper, and a Sharpshooter. Now, not all of these people are maximum level. In fact, the Sharpshooter is only a Captain. But we can buff her aim to a pretty ridiculous level thanks to a Perception PCS and using the Hunter's Rifle. Plus, she does have the Death from Above ability. That's the main one that I want. So she's still one of our best soldiers despite her lower rank. And I've made sure to bring Julian as the spark since he has the repair ability. I figure we may need it on this one as it's a much longer mission than the network tower. More chance that something could go wrong. And in this one we get to use the commander's avatar too, so that's a nice power boost on top. Now the plan is pretty simple. We want to move forward with the Reaper and then use Long Watch with the sniper to activate the pods on the enemy turn rather than ours. And with the initial pods, we want to get a couple of kills with the Templar in order to max out her focus bar. We encounter a sector pod pretty early into the piece, and here I make a bad play. I grapple Cloud the sharpshooter onto one of the hanging ledges. I thought this was a good idea as it will boost her aim even further and it'll allow her to use death from above. But see, I moved her too close to the sector pod so she gets caught in the blast when we destroy it. Now she does only take minor damage, but I was annoyed at myself about this one. And straight after we're done with that pod, I mess up again. I move the Reaper through a window which blows his concealment and activates a pod. It was the last move of the turn too, so we can't do anything before Advent gets to hit us back pretty hard. Now it was a misclick, or a not paying enough attention click at the very least, so I do try to reload here. But the game hasn't actually been auto-saving on this mission. This is a glitch with XCOM 2, it does happen from time to time, sometimes the game just doesn't autosave. So that means if I want to go back, we're going to have to reload all the way back to the network tower. Now that sounds way too time consuming for me, so we're just going to take the hits. And we do take some damage, as well as getting a psionic bomb dropped on the majority of the squad. However, we hit back pretty hard as well, and once all the remaining enemies are low on HP, I activate Reaper with Petrova, and we start slicing and dicing. So that pod gets dealt with, I then place Thomas back into concealment, and we can keep moving forward. And then we just continue the same strategy of having the concealed Reaper do the scouting for us, while the sharpshooter can activate pods with Long Watch, and this works quite well at luring pods into Overwatch traps. Now before we activate the final pod that has the gatekeeper, I use our only healing protocol on Cloud. Her HP was down to 3 by this point, so I figured we should use it just in case. Now this means the only other way we can heal our human soldiers is with Restoration Protocol. Now this ability will heal every human member of the squad as needed, it won't do sparks, but we can only use it once per mission. So after that one use, there's no more heals, no matter what happens. And it was really good that I decided to heal Cloud when I did, since activating the Gatekeeper pod causes it to use its massive AoE attack rather than scattering. Now it really shouldn't be able to do this, something is going wrong with the game, but this is actually the second time that this has happened on this final mission, and it's really annoying. So if I hadn't healed Cloud, she'd be down and out right now, and we would be down one soldier. However, she's alive, and it's now time for us to show this Gatekeeper what we do to Advent units who don't play by the rules. And spoiler alert, it's the exact same thing we do to Advent units who do follow the rules, just with a little extra pinch of salt. So then we head into the final chamber, and before we begin combat, I use Repair with Julian and Restoration Protocol with Icicle, so all of our troops have as much health as they can. Then I start with the usual play of wiping out the first avatar with Banish, and Thomas isn't actually a colonel either, he's only a major, so his extra Banish shots cannot be used on the Archons. We haven't unlocked the Annihilate ability. But it's actually okay, since we use Depression to mind control one of the Archons anyway, so we want it to be at full health. And the other one we can easily dispose of, as we still have 5 soldiers left who still have action points. And then the game decides to be a bit nasty, I have to say. It throws us 2 pods of nothing but codexes. Now normally this would be no problem, but for this particular challenge, We can't use flashbangs or frost bombs to stop them from cloning, and the lack of blue screen rounds means it's going to be very difficult to one-shot these guys. And if every single one of these things gets to clone, that's 12 enemies that we're going to have to deal with. However, I did say difficult to one-shot, not impossible. We do have Petrova who can hit one of the pods with Ionic Storm, and because she takes out 3 enemies in the process, her focus bar immediately fills again. Now the downside is that Ionic Storm is now on cooldown, and we probably won't be able to use it again for the rest of the mission, but I think this was worth it. Meanwhile, our avatar has mind-controlled one of the other codexes, so now we've gone from 6 enemies that can clone down to only 2. That is much more manageable. And with her extra pistol shots plus death from above, Cloud actually takes out the rest of the codexes and their clones all by herself. I also take a shot at the mind-controlled codex. The avatar's mind control isn't permanent, so we may lose control of this thing later on in the mission. This way, if that does happen, the codex is already on low health and we'll be able to take it out quite quickly. So then the second avatar arrives and even more codexes spawn in just because we haven't had enough of those yet. Now as usual, we want to prioritize the avatar first, worry about everything else later. So I drop a blaster bomb on it and then we use Icicle. Now he's picked up rapid fire as a hidden ability and he has the Warlock's rifle which does guaranteed critical hits on psionic enemies. So needless to say, this avatar doesn't stay around for too long. I use Void Rift on the codexes. I'm hoping we can get a mind control or a panic on at least one of them, but Depression's psionic stat is actually kind of low, so his chances of hitting with Insanity aren't great. And in this instance, we unfortunately don't get any of the Insanity rolls. Now we do still have 2 other mind-controlled units, so we're fielding a total of 9 soldiers. Now that's a lot, but even so, we cannot take all the enemies down. Now thankfully I've positioned our Archon on the front line, and the remaining Advent units target it. The rest of our squad is safe. And then look at this. A squad of 3 heavy mechs spawns in, and they all go on Overwatch. These are some horrible reinforcements that we're getting this run. Now we still have the codex, so I can use a psionic bomb of our own, and we can easily remove all of those Overwatches in one hit. But something a little bit weird happens here. The game is telling me that the mechs are still on Overwatch, even though I've just disabled all of their guns. So I move with the Archon first, just to test if the mechs can actually shoot us or not. And it turns out to be a false alarm. The Overwatch is gone, despite the game suggesting the contrary. So I guess just a weird glitch happening there. But even so, I was a bit worried about how to take all these enemies down. I really wanted to use Petrova with Reaper, but she's too far away to be able to attack anyone. At least that is, until we fire at the last codex and it clones. This causes the codex to spawn close enough to Petrova that we can now activate Rend, and we only need to deliver 1 to begin the chain of attacks with Reaper. So needless to say, it's a bad turn to be Advent on this one. And once we're done with Reaper, we're able to use one of the Avatar's corpses to create a ghost with Petrova. So now we have 2 Templars. That's really nice. So the final avatar arrives, and it's time to throw everything we have at it. We shred with Julian to start things off, and then we actually hit it with the Archon. Archons have pretty bad accuracy, so I'm impressed that this one hit. And now, what better way to finish off an avatar than by using the psionically reanimated corpse of another avatar? We send in the ghost, and this run is over. Another successful one in the bag. And check this out, the global stats are back, and some of them are just as ridiculous as ever. Still, I am happy to see them again. I guess it was just glitched or something last time, maybe the servers weren't working, I don't know. So this was an interesting run. We didn't lose a single soldier, and I really did not expect that. I thought we were going to have casualties left and right on this one. And because I was expecting a large number of casualties, I recruited a large number of soldiers, and this kind of turned out to bite me in the end. We had several soldiers that weren't at maximum level, just because our barracks was, I think, actually too big, and we were spreading the XP out too much. But really, once we had those sparks in play, those guys could deal enough damage that not very much could stand up to us. And obviously, playing on a lower difficulty did make things easier, but I also think we got some really good luck on this run. Getting tactical analysis fairly early into the campaign made a huge difference. And like I said before, we scored some really helpful resistance orders which also gave us an edge. So that'll do it from me today. I hope you liked this one. If you did, please consider doing the usual things of leaving a like and a comment, as well as subscribing to the channel. And I'll be back with some more XCOM soon, and I hope to see you then. Have a great day.